I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for joining us from our studios in Israel. Coming up in today's newscast, Israel moves forward with banning Al Jazeera. It looks like Hamas and the Palestinian Authority might be joining forces. And this may sound strange, but the furriest Israeli security guards in history are now on their way to India. Stay tuned for the latest news in Israel. Well, it looks like Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is putting his money where his mouth is. Israel is moving ahead with plans to shut down the Qatari news network Al Jazeera once and for all. Israeli Communications Minister Ayub Kara has just announced his intentions to close all Al Jazeera's offices in Jerusalem.
זיהינו שיש כלים שלא משמשים את חופש הביטוי, אלא משסים את ביטחון אזרחי ישראל. ואחד הכלים והכלי המרכזי היה אל-ג'זירה, שבעצם גרם לנו לאבידות של מיטב בנינו, ובעצם
For Netanyahu and many Israelis, Al Jazeera's coverage of last month's Temple Mount crisis was the last straw. At the height of the crisis, the Israeli Prime Minister took to Facebook to accuse the Al Jazeera news network of inciting violence over the Temple Mount and promised to rally the government to remove the network from Israel altogether. Several other nations such as Jordan, Egypt, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates have already booted Al Jazeera from their countries in protest of Qatar, where Al Jazeera is based. The Israeli Communications Minister has announced Israel's plan to join these other Arab nations in shutting Al Jazeera offices and to bar any Al Jazeera reporters from working in Israel ever again. He even calls Al Jazeera the mouthpiece of terror for Hamas, Hezbollah, Iran, and the Islamic State, accusations that the network have repeatedly denied.
להעדיף את ביטחון אזרחי ישראל, וכדי בעצם להביא למצב שהערוצים שנמצאים כאן ידווחו באופן אובייקטיבי, ואין לנו בעיה, יש לנו עוד ערוצים ממדינות שונות, ואין לנו בעיה איתם, שימשיכו לדווח וידווחו הכל, אבל כלי שנקבע על ידי כמעט כל המדינות הערביות, שהוא בעצם תומך טרור, ואנחנו יודעים את זה בוודאות, אז אנחנו הולכים לקבוע כמה צעדים כדי להמחיש קודם כל את המלחמה שלנו בטרור ובאסלאם הקיצוני והזדהות עם העולם הערבי השפוי.
Though Israel's actions would leave Al Jazeera offices in Gaza and the West Bank in place, Al Jazeera has promised to fight the move in court. There's no timetable in place yet for when closures are going to start, but clearly, this is near the top of the Knesset's list. With the Prime Minister's former chief of staff now part of 2 police investigations against him, you would think that Netanyahu would be sweating bullets. But even though 2/3 of Israelis are saying he should resign if police indict him, the Prime Minister is doing his best to play it cool. Former Chief of Staff Ari Harrow's turn to state witness has sent shockwaves throughout the country. Harrow has just given police significant evidence in 2 ongoing corruption scandals against his former boss. That would be Case 1000, which accuses Netanyahu of accepting illicit gifts from billionaires, and Case 2000, which accuses him of using political power to squash an Israeli newspaper in exchange for good coverage from its rival. Police indictments may be imminent, but the Prime Minister is trying to play things business as usual and has denied any wrongdoing. Culture Minister Miri Regev has been one of the Prime Minister's most vocal supporters at a time when even Netanyahu's allies have been oddly silent.
שהממשלה נראה נינוח, שוחחתי איתו גם אתמול ובטוח בעצמו, כפי שהוא חזר ואמר, אין כלום כי לא היה כלום. אני סומכת ב100% על ראש הממשלה. צריך להפסיק עם הלינץ' התקשורתי הזה של חלקים מהתקשורת ומהאופוזיציה שעושים את כל מה שניתן כדי להפיל את הימין, כדי להפיל את נתניהו. זה לא יעזור להם. מחליפים שלטון בקלפי, לא בחקירות ולא בכותרות.
Harrow is also treading very lightly these days. The former aide to Netanyahu has reportedly told close friends that he doesn't see his turn to state's witness as a betrayal to his former boss, and that he's proud of the time he served the public under Netanyahu. Of course, Harrow stands to gain the most from his recent flip. The police have granted him immunity on his own corruption scandals in exchange for his testimony. And now 2/3 of Israelis believe the prime minister should resign altogether if indictments are issued, with over half the country saying they don't believe he's innocent in the first place. Joining us now in the studio to discuss the issues surrounding Prime Minister Netanyahu is Eli Hazan, the Foreign Affairs Director from Netanyahu's very own Likud party. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so, Netanyahu has seemed to keep much of a poker face throughout everything that's been going on over the course of the past couple of days. But would you say that he's feeling extra pressure?
He has to deal with it, no doubt about it. I would not say extra pressure, but you have to deal with challenge, and that's what he did. I mean, that's what he's doing for last months, and it's not only that. I would like to mention that Netanyahu has been persecuted by the left wing since 1988, ever since he came back from the United Nations. And he had to deal with a lot of allegations that we know that for so many years has been as a false. Now, this is another one.
So you're saying that these are all false allegations?
No doubt about it. And
but he did say that he accepted gifts from...
It's not
He said
illegit.
that. He said...
Yeah, no doubt about it. We know that. It doesn't mean that it's illegit or illegal. And we know that. Now, moreover, I would like...
thousands, hundreds of thousands of shekels worth of gifts is not just
No doubt
a
about
dinner.
it.
It's not dinner, on the town.
I tell you what is my problem.
Okay.
I've been listening to a lot of MKs from the left wing for many months, which say we cannot beat Netanyahu in the election, therefore we are going to a different direction, and that is the direction. Now, they will have to prove it, and it's not easy. And besides that, don't forget, you read only the leftist Israeli media. You don't know exactly what's happened inside. We've been there in 1999, that it seems to us at that time that Netanyahu will be accused as in something, if you remember, the gifts
Well, what's
issue.
interesting is that we're seeing these polls come out now, right? 66% of Israelis polled are saying they want Netanyahu to step down if he is indicted. And many of these people believe that he isn't innocent, that he in fact committed a crime here. Now, what is your response to these polls and to those people?
You know that the polls in Israel is false, because we saw that before the election of 2015. The polls showed that the left wing is going to win, and we saw what's happened after the election. We won the election. We saw that in Brexit. We saw that with Trump. Besides that, the poll for me is only the election, and we saw what's happened in the last election. Moreover, I look at Netanyahu policy from 2009 until today, and you cannot ignore the fact that there is a huge difference between Israel of 2009 and Israel of 2017. And I looked at his policy. And if you want to change or to replace the prime minister, let's go to election. And they know in the left wing that they cannot achieve it because we are much popular, very popular, because of our policy and ideology.
Interesting. Now, let's talk about the investigation itself and kind of the trial. You're saying that the press has not been fair to the prime minister, but have the courts here and have the police been fair to the prime minister?
Yes, we believe so. They do whatever they need to do, but I want to quote the former Supreme High Court, Mishael Cheshin, which said in 2006, we cannot ignore from the voices outside the court. And it means a lot. It means that there is an influence of, the surrounding, and we have to deal with it.
Now, what's interesting is that we saw Culture Minister Miri Regev speak out against what is happening against Netanyahu, but we've heard a lot of silence from other members of the Likud party. It almost seems
completely untrue.
Okay.
I suggest you to follow the Facebook of all the ministers and MKs of Likud, and you can see that all of them, with no exception, support Prime Minister Netanyahu, because don't forget, for us, it's not about Netanyahu. It's about us. It's about Likud members.
What do you say about Ari Haro? I mean, is he lying? I mean, clearly this is a big
Ari
deal.
Haro is an honorable man. I know him for so many years, but he's under pressure. And sometimes under pressure you do things that not all the time fits to reality. So that's the situation of Ari Haro. Now, again, you don't know what's going to be there because no one knows.
All right. Well, listen, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we've been following these meetings and talks for weeks now, and suddenly it's looking like a unity government between the terror group Hamas and the Palestinian Authority might actually be happening. Hamas has just agreed to a reconciliation deal with PA President Mahmoud Abbas in an historic agreement brokered by Egypt. Egyptian President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi has been overseeing negotiations for a unity government between the Palestinian Authority's ruling Fatah party and its rival Hamas. This would be a huge change in the Palestinian world because things had been furiously divided ever since Hamas seized control of Gaza from the PA in 2007. Now it looks like a major reconciliation deal is back on the table, and there could be a lot to gain. For Hamas, it would mean an end to the financial cuts President Abbas has laid on Gaza, and for Abbas, it would mean seeing his government's leadership restored in the Gaza Strip. But the deal isn't closed just yet. Though Hamas has reportedly agreed to the Egyptian president's deal, the terms are still being worked out. President Abbas has just sent in a counteroffer detailing his terms, and now the parties are waiting to see what Hamas will or won't agree to. The rivaling parties pulled a major win on the Temple Mount a few weeks ago by joining together to boycott Israel's security measures at the holy site. So now they're obviously realizing the power of creating a unified government. This will, of course, have major implications for Israel, but we won't know exactly what until the deal is firmly in place. An Israeli judge in Haifa has just set a major precedent by revoking the citizenship of an Arab-Israeli man convicted of carrying out a terror attack in 2015. This could mark a big turning point in how the state deals with domestic terrorists. And here to tell us more is ILTV's Brett Allen Smith. Now, Brett, has this ever happened before?
No. This is the first time that any Israeli court has ever stripped away citizenship from a terrorist like this. So it's the kind of thing that maybe politicians will suggest hypothetically or people talk about in the streets, but never from an actual court. So obviously this is potentially a big change in the way that the state may choose to prosecute terrorists in the future.
Absolutely. I mean, this is something that could be very huge in the future. So let's check out your report.
In October of 2015, Alaa Raed Ahmad Zaoud, an Arab Israeli from northern Israel, rammed his car into an IDF soldier, then jumped out of the car and stabbed 3 more people. He was quickly apprehended by police and sentenced to 25 years in jail on 4 counts of attempted murder. But for many Israelis, including Interior Minister Aryeh Deri, this wasn't enough, and they've had it with homegrown Arab-Israeli terror. The Israeli minister filed a request to have Zaoud's Israeli citizenship revoked, seen as a controversial move by some. Zaoud had openly testified that he'd wished to kill himself by killing Jews that day, and even confessed that his attack had been nationalistically motivated, or in other words, was an intentional terror attack. Well, now the deputy president of Haifa's chief magistrate's court is sending a threat to would-be terrorists, saying that, quote, "We cannot allow an Israeli citizen to impact the lives and dignity of other Israeli citizens, and whoever decides to do so in acts of terror removes himself from the general society of the country." By revoking his Israeli citizenship, Zaoud will be officially stateless in October, granted temporary status to remain in prison in Israel for the remainder of his sentence. But what happens after that will be up to the Interior Minister, who will have the option to revoke his residency. This is a decision that has undoubtedly just set a major precedent in future cases of domestic terror.
Former IDF soldier Elor Azaria has been hoping for some good news lately, but now military prosecutors have denied his request to delay serving his 18 months in jail. Azaria lost his appeal last week to drop the sentence along with his manslaughter charges for killing a Palestinian attacker that had already been neutralized in the West Bank. Azaria has been faced with a difficult choice ever since the courts denied his appeal. He could either go for another appeal and keep fighting the charges in court, or start serving his jail time and go for a pardon from the IDF Chief of Staff and President Rivlin. Now it looks like he's made up his mind and will be trying to ride the wave of public support. This is a controversial case that has greatly divided Israel, with some calling Azaria a hero and others calling him a cold-blooded murderer. Azaria has just sent his formal appeal to IDF Chief of Staff Gadi Eisenkot, begging for a reduced jail sentence. Eisenkot has already been on the record assuring the public that he would strongly consider an appeal like this as long as Azaria expressed serious regret for his actions. But these are the exact emotions many find lacking from Azaria's letter to the Chief of Staff. Azaria had hoped to delay serving his jail time until Eisenkot had reached a decision, but now military prosecutors have denied this request. Azaria will be taken to his prison cell in central Israel on Wednesday, and all of Israel will be waiting with him to see what happens next. Well, there isn't a ton of cooperation between Israel and the Palestinians these days, but it looks like there's one thing that they can both agree to work on: putting an end to stinky sewage. For decades, sewage has been flooding the biblical Kidron Valley and flowing back and forth under both Israeli and Palestinian land. Now, both sides are working together to clean up that mess. These are the images of the Kidron Valley. This place is supposed to be a desert, but as you can see, it's currently overflowing with baby wipes, water runoff, and yes, raw sewage. Because the waste flows in and out of Palestinian and Israeli land, it's been a complicated and political process to find a joint solution. But now both sides are joining together to clean things up.
הגענו להסכם שאחרי עשרות שנים שהנושא לא נפתר, מאלף ואחת סיבות מקצועיות ופוליטיות, הגענו להסכמה נניח צינור בוואדי, וגם בשטחי B של הרשות הפלסטינית, ובהמשך גם בשטחי C בצד שלנו, כדי לנקז את כל הביוב, לטהר את חלקו למים ולטפל בו למים לחקלאות.
Though the director of the Palestinian Wastewater Department is reluctant to call this a joint effort with Israel, the project requires both sides to commit resources towards cleaning up their own territories section of the runoff.
اهتمام مشترك بتنظيف منطقة وادي النار من المياه الصرف الصحي غير المعالجة وليس مشروع مشترك. نحن من باب الاهتمام في تنظيف المنطقة توصلنا لاتفاق مع الجانب الإسرائيلي بخصوص إقامة محطتين معالجة تخدم تجمعات فلسطينية، أحدها في منطقة بيت لحم باتجاه وادي الزعترة والأخرى تخدم منطقة أبو ديس والسواحري والعزارية، وأيضا تنفصل عن منطقة وادي النار بشكل كامل. الهدف من هذا المشروع هو هدف بيئي، إعادة تجميع المياه العادمة وإعادة استخدامها في الزراعة.
This is a project that's had starts and stalls for decades now, but the proposed pipeline would clean up the mess on both territories and reduce the runoff that's already gotten as far as the Dead Sea. So environmentalists are obviously very hopeful that this time around things actually get done. All right, the World Health Organization estimates that nearly 10% of the world adult population suffers from diabetes. And for many, one of the toughest things about the disease is dealing with the pain caused by poor circulation, especially in the feet. Well, if you're one of these people, then you're going to want to hear this because an incredible Israeli company has a solution. Joining us in the studio to tell us about Medic Shoes are founder and inventor of Medic Shoes, Yafa Golan, and Professor Eliezer Kleinman, the researcher at the Geffen Institute, who put the shoes to the test. Okay, so thank you for joining us. So tell us, what are these Medic shoes?
We tested these Medic shoes in two branches, two separate branches. The first one is the subjective one. We wanted to know whether these shoes may help may help patients with symptoms of peripheral vascular disease or symptoms of sleep disorders as well. Yeah, and we find out that the results were near excellent.
So what were the results? Tell us about that.
Improvement, a significant improvement of sleeping disorder, a significant improvement of the symptoms of peripheral vascular disease, like tingling, like pain at rest, and so on. And it's a very, very important development, of course. If I can offer or suggest these patients such a solution, a medical solution, instead of medications or something like this.
Well, that's what I was going to ask.
It's a great achievement.
What are the other treatments that exist for these issues right now?
Hypertension, for example, as well. And then this brings us to the other branch. The other branch is a physiological, objective branch, which we find out here in this test, for example, that there are several parameters which may improve significantly during a month of using these shoes. For example, cardiac output, stroke volume. Stroke volume is the volume of each heartbeat. Stroke volume. Volume of each heartbeat will improve by using the shoes for only 1 month.
So how do the shoes work? Because I see you have a little bit of a remote here.
It goes as it enables relaxation and pressure and something like alternative medicine, but it's very, very effective and with medical proof, with investigational medical proof.
Now, I hear that there's a vibration, so that helps improve the circulation as well.
That's right, and the usage is only in lying. Yeah, the usage is only in lying or sitting position, not walking with the shoes. For 15 to 30 minutes per day, that's all.
Wow.
Yeah, recommended before sleep.
So you don't need to be wearing these all day long?
No, of course. Yeah, and it makes you sleeping well because it reduces the peripheral vascular resistance of your blood pressure, of your blood vessels, the peripheral blood vessels, and as such, it reduces the blood pressure. It reduces your tension, your nervous tension, and so on, and it increases the cardiac output and the cardiac work, stroke volume, and so on.
So where can you get these shoes if you're interested, for our viewers who are interested in purchasing them?
By now, you can achieve it, I suppose, I hope that it will be everywhere, all over the world.
Yeah.
All over the world, but so far it's not available in most of the countries because they don't know about the benefits of these shoes.
Well, and I guess now we're getting it out here for our viewers.
Yeah, and that's why.
We do many agreements with all the world.
All the world.
In India, in United States, in China, in...
Thank you so much for coming in. Thank you for telling us about this. All right. Israeli soldiers are known to travel abroad to India after they finish their service. But now it looks like an entirely different kind of veteran will be headed to Southeast Asia. That's right. Dozens of Israeli attack and sniffer dogs are setting out to protect the Indian Prime Minister, and it's not just because they're furry and cute. India has bought dozens of security dogs from the Israeli Army's Oketz Canine Unit. Each dog costs tens of thousands of dollars to train, and so far around 30 of them have already landed in India to boost security for top Indian leaders. The Israeli Army's canines are trained to sniff out explosive booby traps and attack assailants. Most of them are Labradors, German Shepherds, and Belgian Malinois dogs, but the IDF also trains a fourth so-called rare breed that they refuse to identify, but is, let's just say, very effective in combat. It looks like Israel won't only be helping the Indian government beef up its security, though. The Israeli army is also being employed to help India's Special Protection Forces upgrade their own dog training center. For the first time ever, an Israeli woman has completed the grueling English Channel swim. For those of you who haven't heard of the Endurance Challenge, let's just say it's no easy feat. Miss Avishag Turek swam over 13 hours from the British town of Dover to reach the French city of Calais. The distance between the two cities is 21 miles, but Turek swam a whopping 28 miles because of the strong currents. It hurts my quads just to say that. And get this, the Israeli swimmer didn't just have to deal with the long distance. She also had to fight off jellyfish along the way and contend with the cold water. The only other Israeli to swim the entirety of the English Channel was Eitan Friedman, a physician who finished the challenge in 1993. This isn't Turek's first swimming accomplishment either. She also swam 10 miles from one end of the Dead Sea to the other here in Israel.
Enroll in eTeacher's online Hebrew courses and quickly discover that it creates the deepest connection to Israel that you could ever imagine.
Well, today Israel is celebrating Tu B'Av, which is the Hebrew equivalent of Valentine's Day. So in honor of the Day of Love, our Hebrew word of the day is Yom Nisuim, which means wedding anniversary in Hebrew. Okay, men, make sure you remember your Yom Nisuim, or the day of your wedding anniversary, but that's just the basics. You've got to be crafty to make this year's Yom Nisuim really special. I mean, you've got to really knock it out of the park. According to tradition, if it's your first Yom Nisuim, you're supposed to get a gift that involves paper. And for the second Yom Nisuim, the theme is cotton. But as you hit Yom Nisuim number 10, you're looking at diamond jewelry, my friend, and Yom Nisuim number 12, pearls. Yom Nisuim number 14, ivory, and if you're blessed enough to find yourself celebrating your 50th Yom Nisuim together, I hope you've saved up, because that means gold, ladies. Not like you had to wait too long for it or anything. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at the weather forecast. Tonight should be clear to partly cloudy with a low of 78 or 26 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow you can expect a slight drop in temperatures to a high of 88 or 31 degrees Celsius, but it will still be unseasonably hot and muggy. All right, that's it for today's news. Today's exchange rate is 3.62 shekels to the American dollar. Remember to sign up for our daily newsletter at iltv.tv. I'm Natasha Kirchuk, and thanks for watching.